Right, we are live proper now. So yeah, um, it's Stark versus Starks. It's Daboarder versus Ariakas. Let's get stuck in. So they're just choosing lists now. Obviously, it's myself. I'm joined by Carlo. Where are you, Carlo?
Good morning.
How are you doing on
Never
this?
my never my best time of the day, but I'll try and be perky. I'll try and lie my way through it, and hey, maybe I'll start to get into it in about an hour's time.
So as we were kind of like just I was talking to the players there, and we really do span the entire globe with this group of people we've got here. So me and Carlo are based in the UK. Ariakas is from Canada, and obviously Daboarder, Scarcrow in this particular um, lobby, he is from Australia. So we literally span the entire globe. Um, so this is what midday for us. It's late evening for Scaro, and I think it's like morning for Ariakas. I think.
Yeah, it must be quite early for Ariakas actually.
I think it's 7 a.m.
Oh, yeah, and quite late for the border. I'm not. This is, if anything, we're the only ones who got a reasonable time out
Yeah,
of this. If only I didn't stay up so late. This would be a normal person's reasonable time.
yeah.
So I think we've seen a list selection from the border. Um,
I'm
we see
guessing
his,
so.
obviously he's using Rob. He's got one of the lists in, which is, I believe, the one he is using. And he has not decided to bring the pair of Tully Sworn shields. Instead, he brings his list, which has 2 units of cavalry, a unit of Stark bowmen, 2 units of Stark Sworn swords, one with Brandon Hodor, one with Rob the
Commander Rob,
Wolf
isn't it?
Lord,
Yeah.
Commander Rob. We see Grey Wind and Summer, and this comes with a pair of NCUs in the form of Sansa and Arya.
Hmm.
I was relatively convinced, particularly after our analysis of the game, and then the fact that the border followed our analysis up with a comment that he thinks of this game mode differently to the way we discussed it. That I thought he would be bringing. I was quite convinced that he would be bringing Rob in Tully Sworn Shields,
Hmm.
um, unless, shall we say, the way I described it, he actually thinks of it in the same way. I believe that he sees this as a way of getting your commander onto the objective, keeping him alive, and scoring 2 points a turn from that.
Hmm.
Whereas I see this as an aggressive, sacrificial game mode where you look to trade, get to the objectives first, use your fastest units, and then trade units one for one as and when they lose the token effectively.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I would typically agree. I believe that controlling the board is much more important in this game mode um, than it might be else in might well it's true in all game modes. I think in Game of Thrones, controlling the board is really important, and I think you do that by getting first, but also by sacrificing units. You can get there first with quick units and sacrifice them to get control of those extra VPs that come down, those extra objectives. um, while we've got some time to waste, we can see they're setting up terrain. We see the Palisade drop and the double bog. I'm gonna have a look at over at chat. So we've got Pork Chop. He's becoming a slight regular over here. We've obviously got Beric. I know he was waiting in the Discord channel. He sent me posted a nice message there. He was waiting quite anxiously for this game to start. 3 sales is over, which is great. We've got Bloodraven Rivers, who I believe followed earlier, so thanks Bloodraven. Duggars is about, so hi Duggars. Who else have we got? I think that's it at the moment. So it's filling up. It's filling up. Hello to all the regulars, and hello to a couple of new people as well. Seeing your favourite players play on stream. Hopefully that's why you're here. So we see the last piece of terrain down that hedge, which is a very interesting placement.
I was about to say, I don't know if this is an attempt to kind of make a dead deployment, something that just won't interact with the game, or if we're about to see somebody try and use that piece of terrain to gain kind of a very specific positioning, something that I've never seen played, and I'll be very interested to see if this interacts. We'll see what whichever player picks that side of the board, what they deploy directly in line with it, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do, then we'll see what that comes. The keywords for the hedge are destructible, hindering, and rough. So there are no defensive capabilities, unlike the wall. You don't get cover or fortified. So I think this is just trying to be a thin corpse pile without the horrific keyword,
Mm-hmm.
effectively.
So we see Ariakas load his lists. You'll see he's got the pair of wolves. He's got Summer and Shaggy Dog though, and he runs the Eddard in Great Axes. I mean, a big shout out to Eddard. I really like Eddard as a commander. I played a game against someone running out. I think it was T-Wood the other day with his Stark list, and he ran Eddard.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I quite like Eddard. I don't think his cards are great, but I did like Commander Eddard. I like the effect he had on the game. Berserkers.
He does have a few quite high impactful cards, but it's very important to keep Eddard himself alive because those cards, some of them require Eddard to be alive, and others have a much greater effect when played on or near Eddard. I'm not hugely familiar with every card, but the key to that game mode is, or that army list build is to keep Eddard alive.
So for those of you that aren't necessarily intact with all of Eddard's cards, what I can do now is I can actually show them to you. So we've got, first of all, where are we? Fury of the Fallen. And we've also got, what else have we got? Lead by example. Oops. Let's change that one. There we go. Make it more manageable. So these are the two of the strongest cards. I also quite like, instead of Fury of the Fallen, I quite like the other card, which is, I believe, Northern Defiance. So you can see here, you know, when a failed unit when a friendly unit would fail a morale test, you then get to re-roll it, and if it's Eddard's unit, you get to make the free attack. That's particularly strong. But yeah, Eddard's cards are interesting. We'll see how they play out as the kind of game progresses.
What's important here is that these begin with when Eddard's unit do something. So that is just the key requirement here, and I guess maybe why we see Tycho get included in this list. Interesting. We see Daboarder. He's playing in white, by the way. Oh no, sorry, that's Ariakas. No,
Ariakas is white, which is red bases.
Yes, they have. So they are yet to flip sides. From a player perspective. So he will.
I don't know.
No, now I'm very much confused.
Ariakas is white in red, playing on the left-hand side of the board.
Ariakas is the white player on TTS playing with red bases.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Scarecrow is pink player playing with white bases. That is
off-green,
massively,
right?
massively confused me. Oh, that's interesting. On my screen, they are absolutely 100% white.
Interesting.
Oh, that is interesting.
That
Okay.
might be, I'll
refer to them as green/yellow because that is how they appear on the stream. Now that I look at it, on my screen they are bone white.
Maybe you just got your gamma set up. We see quite a conservative placement.
Yeah, I was about to say what we see Daboarder deploying towards the back of the trays with all his fast units. That is interesting. I don't know. The question will be: will he be aggressive with his cavalry? With his infantry to go and take those points, or is he actually going to sit at the back of the table and not engage? I don't personally see any advantage in that, because allowing your opponent to have those objectives for free at the start of the game, I don't I don't see the play, but Lockie has proved himself to be a thinker of this game and a good player of this game. So we'll see whether or not he has something very specific in mind. I will be confused if he doesn't end up with his infantry units like in an advanced deployment towards the front of that 12 inches. I think he'll be giving up a lot and not gaining much for it. He is equally maneuverable with his opponent, I would say. There's a pair of dogs on each side. There is 2 cavalry on one side. He has a unit advantage in the form of basically a unit of stock outriders is his main advantage there. There's the Tully Cavaliers on both sides, a pair of dogs on both sides, and
3 infantry. In the
and
space
3
of
infantry.
1 bowman on.
Yeah, he does have the single bowman, which gives him kind of a zonal control.
So maybe we're seeing. Right. So what we might be seeing here is we might be seeing like almost like a vanguard movement through the middle. I think what Lockie looks like he's setting up, Daboarder looks like he's setting up, is setting through like a big push in the middle of the map. He wants to blunt Ariakas's kind of like advance of things like the berserkers and the great axes onto his infantry units, which he hopes will stay alive through the pain. With the like of Rob, who I believe the Commander Rob has the Wolf's Cunning, so disorderly charges. He's putting the infantry units at the front. Maybe he's in hopes to sacrifice them, but then for the bowmen to do their damage and for the cavalry to then be able to come out and flank out and push through, while also using the dogs to control the objectives that drop behind. So I think this is very much a.
It is a very interesting option.
And sacrifice things.
I assume that we see the archers look to guard one of the 2 objectives. If not, then surely we see the dogs claiming objectives for free, and Ariakas just counters by deploying his army central as well. If you're not going to contest them, the dogs can have them without repercussion. Maybe he's hoping that what Ariakas does is, as in the more common setup, he places his units wide so that he can react either way with his cavalry while sending his infantry down the center, and he can kind of push through the center and overlap wide after blowing up the center of your opponent's army. Something that I discussed about. I really wanted to see Bob Bernard. Sorry, I wanted to see Bob Bernard make that same move against the Rose Knights yesterday. That would have been a very effective strategy against only a 4 combat unit army. But I'm unsure that it works into an army with as much board presence and utility as the Starks, because you are not having more options than your opponent. I think we will see the Great Axes go down onto Ariakas's left to claim the left-hand objective, 2 points a turn for free with the commander. That's where we see it go, and I think that is something that the Daboarder is going to have to come and deal with.
The thing is, you can use Summer on this left flank as well. Ariakas can use Summer as a little bit like a decoy missile in front of Eddard's unit. Just position him in front of Eddard's unit so Eddard can't be easily charged. And then if Summer does get charged and Summer does die, then Eddard can just charge forward with the great axes and come and slice some heads off.
He counters by placing Rob on his on the opposite side of the table, and currently Ariakas has very little to deal with Rob, unless he commits those Tullys right over to that side of the board. So it looks like the Daboarder is effectively looking to set up a commander for commander control exchange. and that is an interesting way to see it. And his cavalry is in a position that he can react and bring them both down upon the great axes. I think that's a very dangerous place for the cavalry to go into, though. If the great axes survive the initial charge, then it's going to be a nasty strike back.
One thing I'm going to say, my unit of the game to watch out for is this Start Bowman unit. We'll watch out for that as the game progresses. And I genuinely think that Start Bowman unit is going to have some real strength.
I think it's interesting that it looks like Lucky had always set up for he had already planned this entire deployment, and you can see that those Stark Bowmen are directly behind a palisade. That palisade was placed as the very first piece of terrain of the game.
Yeah.
And he knew that that's what he wanted, and that's where he wanted these bowmen. They will dominate this right-hand objective, and for me, Daboarder currently has more options on the board. He has more points on the board, more units on the board, and Ariakas should, in my opinion, refuse to engage and should accept the 2 for 2 VPs per turn with both commanders controlling objectives, because that will allow him time to readdress his army over onto that side.
Yeah.
And he should be trying to use his tactics board presence to gain advantage before any combats are brought. If he gets sucked into an early fight, then Daboarder's extra board presence and extra units on the board will come good. And Ariakas needs to show some patience here.
Yeah.
First move of the game, and we're off.
We see Aria moving on to letters, drawing the 2 tactics cards for Daboarder. And we see Weakened come out on the Tully Cavaliers. In response, we got the other Aria. So the difference is going to be bright white versus kind of like off kind of silver. It looks like it's coming down onto Moneybags, and we're going to see the direct counter come in with that token coming off. So nothing's really happened except 2 card draw so far. One thing I will do, I'll take the time while we're still seeing the first opening moves. I'll take the time to remind people, if you are a Twitch, if you do have Amazon Prime, you get the free Prime subscription. We'd obviously love it if you use it here, but obviously you don't have to use it here. You can use it any other of your Twitch channels that you might be watching. But yeah, free Twitch Prime sub. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps support the channel. We've also got merch, which I believe is available now below. I think we've got some T-shirt designs now. So if you want to look into any of that, it's just below the video, and all the links are in the description. Okay, so Sansa comes out onto Crowns. This feels like a bit of a non-play, really.
I think they're all non-plays. Nobody's rushing to these objectives. Everybody will be able to have them on the second turn, so the horses don't have much value. Whew, it's not such a non-play. We see 4 wounds come out.
Onto the Great Axes as
well.
Onto
the Great Axes. That is rough. Like I say, we're not rushing to get to these objectives before our opponents. And so the horses itself is a dead movement. We see Ariakas take it now as the 4th choice, which, normally you'd expect it to be high on the priority list of the Starks, but they both expect nothing to occur for these first few turns. So we're left with some swords, which presumably will get covered by Tycho at some point. It is not going to be able to result in an attack.
Sudden Charge is an option. Sudden Charge is an option, remember, in the Stark deck.
It is always, yes, of course. So it is, well, he covers it up, which wastes an activation, but does give away the information that he doesn't have Sudden Charge. I think that...
Or at least he's not going to use it this turn.
Of course, yeah. His 3 NCU versus 2 NCU matchup here has to be used to apply continuous pressure and options that you could sudden charge at any given time.
Hmm.
And almost faking that you have it can be very important in the matchup. Obviously, the other Stark player is very aware that it exists as a Stark player themselves.
Of course.
So it should ever be in your opponent's mind as to what it could be used for. But really, you're going to have to kind of make a good show of what you would do with it, shall we say, if you're trying to fake that you had it, because a Stark player will be well aware of what kind of moves they would try and make um, with one themselves.
So, one thing I was going to say, it is kind of like well known with the way that Daboarder plays, Lucky plays. He plays quite slowly. Saw that in the game against you. So I do wonder whether or not he values building this hand of cards up, building up almost like the ultimate turn, and then just going, right, this is the turn I break you. And this even plays into this cavalry being deployed further at the back. He's got no interest in engaging quickly. He wants to take his time and set up a perfect turn, and then stomp. So I think that's what we're going to see from, like, we can see the Grey Wing coming around the back. Tully Cavaliers coming forward here from Ariakas. He's going for that
Yeah, we
march.
see him readdressing his battle line over further to the right. He wants to not engage and protect Eddard here.
Hmm.
It's going to be very important that Eddard stays alive because of the way Eddard functions as a commander, and also because of the fact that we have now committed almost entirely to this commander. Each commander scoring 2 VPs a turn for the first. We're talking likely to be held and uncontested on turn 2, I believe. And the question is whether or not we even see much aggressive combat on turn 3.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, in the chat, Beric saying that round 3 to 4 is going to be spicy with the 2 areas. Yeah, I would be more tending to agree that, round 3, round 4, when we see some of these maybe area plays come out, when people feel like it's necessary. I mean, Daboarder went second this turn, didn't he? Or did he go first? No, he went first this
He
turn.
took first, so he will be first on turn 3,
So
and
he's
I think
probably
that
setting
that's
up
what
for.
he will be playing for.
Yeah, he's setting up for turn 3.
He has had a good turn so far. His total sum is that he gained 2 tactics cards into hand, and he did 4 wounds.
And taking a rank off the
Yeah,
berserkers is
taking
good.
a whole rank off those great axes, which is very important for how hard he can hit them and how hard he would expect to be hit back.
Yeah.
So Ariakas is effectively going to have to work out a way that he's going to get those wounds back. Remind me what Eddard Commander's actual card effects are.
So his commander
He does.
is for the north.
He does have a healing effect, does he not?
Yeah, so whenever his unit makes a melee attack, one friendly unit can heal 2 within long range.
Okay.
So that's his commander card. His cards themselves, just remind myself, we've got Northern Defiance, Lead by Example, and Fury of the Fallen. I'll quickly whip up 2 of those for us. Lead by Example and Northern Defiance. Neither of those are heals. Those are
Yeah.
start for any turns or morale test based things. And then we've got, just turn those off. Fury of the, where is it? Fury of the Fallen, I think is the other one we missed, wasn't it?
Is that when a unit is destroyed or attacked, Eddard's unit gets to activate again?
It's this one here. So yes, yeah. So he doesn't actually have any healing cards available to Eddard, but he does have some interesting bits in the toolkit.
But he is almost Rose Knight's on steroids in that he heals 2 every time he makes an attack.
Yeah.
So getting them and in great axes, basically, if you're in combat and it becomes a stalemate, then that's a huge deal.
Hmm.
I think that that's definitely what Tycho is here for. And the question is can Daboarder set up a position where he can charge and destroy the Great Axes in a single turn, we'll call it, or well, no, in a short sequence of. I think he would be very lucky to destroy them in a single activation, a single turn.
Yeah.
Can he destroy them in, say, a pair of sequential turns? Can he destroy them within a very short period of a round so that we can't start to see that grinding come out
Yeah.
from the Great Axes?
Um. Okay. So we see a lot of shifting around here. I think Ariakas is really responding quite well to this deployment, and he's
Yeah,
shifting a lot of his focus over to the left flank. Um. He's also giving this like nice refused kind of area. It's going to limit the Stark Bowman's effectiveness. He's positioning himself away from them effectively. Um, but I wouldn't be surprised if you saw the Stark Bowman march up this turn. Yeah, so we see
yeah.
the Stark
We
Bowman coming up
see we
now.
see him. He's staying 12 inches away from where the palisade can effectively limit the Stark Bowman's movement to anyway. So that palisade is coming in as a hindrance now to Lockie. But the question is can he? It's only a hindrance as long as he never has Ariakas come over to that objective, and that's not a hindrance because he is scoring 2 points a turn as long as he controls it.
Yeah.
The question is it looks like basically Lockie has the options to go after Eddard's unit, and Ariakas does not. All he has is Shaggy Dog,
Hmm.
which it seems that he's pulling away from there, rightly so. Shaggy is not going to win a combat over there, and all he's going to do is give up a VP.
Probably just die to the
So
Bowman, to be honest.
exactly. So the question comes up: can Lockie win against the Great Axes without giving up too much?
Yeah.
If he sends only cavalry over there, if he loses and starts to lose units, he won't be generating more corpse piles onto Ariakas' side of the board. So he won't give up additional tokens that way. But as long as we're looking to score 2 points every turn off of commanders, single units destroyed are basically going to decide where this game lies.
Yeah.
He does have a much more realistic chance of destroying the Great Axes than Ariakas does of destroying Rob at any time in this game right now. So I think Daboarder will feel in control of the fact that he has the choice to go and do it, but because if he can destroy Eddard's unit, he will almost have effectively won the game already.
Yeah.
Because it will be very, very difficult for Ariakas to ever move into Rob's objective and take those two VPs a turn. And then we'll effectively be seeing a 2-for-1 every turn from then on, and things will probably only get worse for Ariakas. But it is a risk. The question is, can the Tully, Cav, and the Outriders destroy Great Axes and Tully Cav with Berserkers sitting close by as well?
Yeah.
And if he goes in and loses, then he is also lost because Eddard will just continue to score 2 points a turn. Rob will continue to score 2 points a turn, and Ariakas will be however many units he killed up in advantage, forcing Daboarder to trickle over his infantry in an attempt to try and start to pick up VPs. At that point, I guess his main target would fall onto Rickon in a not particularly strong unit of
Stormcrow Mercs.
Stormcrow mercenaries who are sat there worth 2 VPs. They have
Yeah.
a big target over their head at the moment as well, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. With the Bowman facing them down as well a little bit. So, while we've got a bit of a lull, it looks like the Great Axes are just working out how they want to move up onto this corpse pile, really. I will thank Larks, who I believe is playing this afternoon against Frerin over at Three Sails. I say this afternoon in about 8 or 9 hours from now. 7.5, I think actually. Over at 3 sales, he'll be playing against Ferrin as the last of the top 4 tables. And also thanks to WHTPXL, so White Pixel is what I'm going to call you now. Thanks for following as well. Um, so, um, one thing I will want to say about this is that if you look up from above, which I'll just quickly do on stream, this actually almost looks like battle lines, which is very rare to see in this kind of like nice way. Um, in A Song of Ice and Fire, usually you just see people line up things in quite literally a flat line and then it's staggered at different points. Whereas this feels a little bit more like actual battle lines that are being established, and it feels a little bit more like both of these Stark players have very much got tactical awareness about them and are aware of where they want to place objects and how they want to use them.
Yeah, I think they've reacted off each other's choice of deployment. It's showing a good awareness of the game mode, a good awareness of their own armies and their opponent's armies, which you would hope in a mirror matchup that you would have a very good awareness and respect for what your opponent can do. I think that knowing the matchup and knowing your opponent's units is very, very important. And the mirror matchup in some ways diminishes that because you both know your own units incredibly well.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a skill that people don't always respect as much as they should. Preparation for the game in general,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding your opponent's army before you play it. And I think that the TTS event really allows for a huge amount of that because of the fact that there is a 1 week period. You've been able to see everybody else's lists ever since the start, and preparation for what will happen. We see another failed morale check come down, which is countered by Northern Defiance. We see the crowns again basically getting used on these onto these Umber Great Axes, and they were about to lose a whole nother 3 models. This is pretty unlucky occurrences.
It is, yeah.
And Ariakas is starting to come under pressure from nowhere when he should be controlling the tactics board.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, he's actually basically on the defensive end with it.
Yeah.
He does get to take the money bags, and most of the damage done has been reset. He has 4 cards in hand, and Daboarder has 5. We are almost back to a null position.
Yeah. I mean, it's slow going. It's slow going. We see start of turn 2, and as we say, it's not a huge amount of actually being kind of like major decisions really being made at the moment. Healing the Great Axes back up.
In terms of the interesting ways that things interact, the one thing I'm unsure of, actually, not playing Starks myself with any at any competitive level, I'm unsure who has the better dogs here, whether or not Greywind has an advantage over either dogs, or if Shaggy's actually the better option. And whether or not any of the dogs will particularly be attempting to hunt each other down, I really don't know. We'd have to look into it. I know Shaggy runs Vicious effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Summer is probably the strongest of all the dogs, thanks to the skin changing ability.
Yeah, Band's Protector.
But how about Greywind? What does he actually bring? I sometimes
He's
forget.
you get vulnerable if you attack in flank or rear.
Interesting. It would be surprising for a direwolf to have been close enough to have given up its flank to another direwolf.
Yeah.
You expect them to be charging each other from a long way away, as and when they might ever choose to engage each other. So I think that Shaggy Dog is probably actually the better choice.
Yeah.
But like I say, Rickon has brought with him a bit of a target on his own head.
Yes, definitely. So, I mean, it's interesting you say about the dogs. Obviously, we are collecting stats over the tournament, and I will be free to take any criticism of this, of course, so far. But statistically talking, Greywind is actually statistically the best dog in terms of overall win rate right now. That doesn't mean much, of course, because win rate doesn't tell you the whole story. Obviously, lists come into a lot of play. There's a hell of a lot of other things that come into that. But it is interesting to know that Greywind is statistically, just based on win rates, the best dog to have. Um, so I think that is worth a mention at least.
Interestingly, we currently have 3 NCUs down, 1 NCU from each player still left to be played, 2 open spaces. This is, like I say, almost each player posturing as if they had a sudden charge and leaving the option open at all times that they could be doing one. I still doubt that we will see any combat this turn. I still doubt that swords will have any use, unless maybe Loki wants to destroy the palisade with it.
Yeah, he could shift forward.
And yeah, Blood Ravens made an interesting point, which, like I say, is not something that I had realized was the most important part of this. Being not a Stark player, that really what's going to kill your dog is having the horses and playing Devastating Impact. That's 2 auto wounds, and basically looking to play for that is going to be key. But I would say also at the same time, Loki is going to need cards like that if he wants to hit those great axes hard enough that he can go straight through the other side and not turn it into a grind. If he doesn't destroy them on the charge, you will inevitably see Tycho instantly heal 5 wounds back to the unit, and then have the unit swing. It is a dangerous prospect to send knights into. They will begin the turn engaged, and they will munch the knights on an attack back if they've survived.
Definitely. Would you consider the fact that he might just attack with the 1 rank to get the crit blow on the Umber Berserkers, even though he's only rolling 6 dice?
Interesting. Yeah,
then use the Tycho on the next turn at the start.
It is definitely a choice. Yeah. 6 dice, I guess, with the crit below, you're expecting to roll a single crit, which is, basically 1 extra hit. Statistically, if you gain yourself 2 extra attacks, then you would get more hits off of full ranks.
Yeah, so you would actually be better to stay on the full ranks.
He would generally be better, unless he would go from 1 rank to 2 ranks, in which case he should definitely stay on the 1 rank because it's the same number of attacks with crit blows.
Yep.
And yes, Space Monkey, we are playing Feast for Crows.
We are, yes. You can see Feast for Crows over there. Okay, so again, a little bit of posturing at the back, kind of like what we refer to as wasted activations, just kind of like burning down the clock timer, forcing someone to make an impactful move. And this is where Daboarder is going to have to make probably 1 impactful move after Ariakas. Ariakas is going to have to do something of importance before Daboarder, because he's only got 3 on-field units.
We'll see his intention towards the 3rd round at the end of the 2nd round. If he wants to take the impetus in round 3 when he has the first activation, then he needs to make an aggressive move as his last activation of round 2. And this is where it's very important that they have activation parity.
Yeah.
And where the Starks normally win because they get these free activations in every round after their opponent has finished. But here you're only going to get it. You're looking to take advantage of that double up of I have the last activation round 2, first activation of round 3. If he doesn't do it in round 2, then he's waiting till he has it in round 5. And that is a long time and a very patient play. The question is whether or not he has the cards in hand that he wants to see and whether or not he's ready to commit to it now. I think that personally, for me, Daboarder should be going for it in round 3 because I think that Ariakas' defensive position is improving all the time. He is readdressing a slightly worse deployment.
That move right there, moving the Berserkers, 1 inch to the left and saying, I'm done.
Yeah.
This is crazy stuff, really.
Yeah. The question is How aggressive does Loki go if he wants to be aggressive on turn 3? And can Ariakas counter it with a start of round area movement? Is there, if he's too aggressive, then he gives up, like, he risks basically being out of position himself. If he's not aggressive enough, then he gives away the chance that Aria can actually basically retreat somebody away from that. Because he only has the one extra activation, and the fact that Ariakas knows this and is waiting with his Tully Cav, Daboarder will only get to be aggressive with one of his units.
Yeah.
And importantly, probably his favorite target for that would be the Tully Cavaliers, but they are weakened. So that is going to massively blunt what their first activation can do in round 3. The use of the tactics board in this way to make sure that the weakened tokens are down, and the very understanding that the start of round 3 is where Daboarder wants something to happen.
So these are the last 3 units left. 1 and 2
here we
side.
Go, and
we've got to see something impactful here.
This is key to knowing when this is going to start getting interesting.
So it looks like we're about to see a card play from, or he's just checking his cards, but we could be seeing a card play here from Daboarder.
We could see him take the Outriders and charge into the front of the Tully, House Tully Cavaliers. What's interesting off the back of that is that it would presumably get countered by a swords, but that may well open up a sudden charge for Daboarder, and that would be a horses-based sudden charge. So if he makes this Outriders play, I would have thought that. Oh, so we see him be patient. Oh no, he clicked the button, but he is moving up. That will be his maneuver. We'll see what he wants to do. I think he has sudden charge, and I think he wants to
That's 10
use
inches
it on
minus 1. That's going to be 11 inches. I don't see.
So I believe that that's just his maneuver. We'll see whether or not he goes anywhere with his actual activation.
Not in range to charge right now, right? The 5-inch movement and the 6 gives him 11, but he's minus 1 for the bog. So he actually can only go a maximum of 10, and that was more than 10 inches away. So this is not going to be a charge. And we see Tycho come out onto horses.
We see Tycho onto horses because he wants to presumably just block the movement. It also allows him to shore up the flank. I was going to say what the Great Axes are worried about is whether or not the Tully Cav come in and clip their flank, where the Cavaliers aren't covering. But at the same time, it would be quite a big activation for the Tully Cavaliers to only move over there and protect that flank. So
interestingly here, sudden charge, which is available to Daboarder, we think, in his hand. We're not sure, of course. We don't know what cards he's got. Sudden charge is still not very viable for the Cavaliers right now.
Nope. So all he can take it with is with the Outriders at the end of this round. But they are not going to do much into the front, in my opinion. So I think Ariakas has really done well to predict what Daboarder might be trying to set up for. He's closed off all the options.
If he positions the Outriders in range to charge the Tully Cavaliers can activate, move forward, and then charge the Outriders. There is going to be no sudden charge this turn.
Yeah.
Unless he can then use the Tully Cavaliers to then charge the charged.
For me, Daboarder should just be taking the loss right now and take the swords activation. He should waste the sword activation and then force the Tully Cavaliers to activate, and then move up with the Outriders into a position that he can do something with them at the start of next turn.
He's clearly thinking. We can see quite a long gap between them, and he's measuring distances.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he. I don't know what other options he thinks he has without seeing his hand. He could, of course. But like I say, he understands that if he gives up this this opportunity, and it looks very much like Ariakas has. It looks like he's considering whether or not he should be destroying this palisade with this swords. If he oh, that's interesting. He looks like he could be trying to decide if he wants to swing those outriders over and start attacking into one of the infantry units and give up this defensive position that Ariakas has created between the Tully Cavaliers and the Great Axes. But I think he's taking a long time over this because he acknowledges that he won't have advantage in this game again until the end of round 4 coming into round 5 if he gives it up on the end of round 2 coming into round 3.
So he takes swords. And it looks like he's going to take a card play here. I'm not really sure what he's thinking about now. Of course, the option to destroy the palisade is there as well if he wants to just attack with the bowman. Measuring distances.
Measuring lots of distances. I really do like the horses maneuver by Ariakas. I think having it shows a great understanding of the fact that if he can just survive the turn without being outpositioned, then he has won the turn because of the way the end of turn 2 into turn 3 matters. And that having the option of the swords open could have allowed him to make an attack if Daboarder misplayed, but he can't be expecting Daboarder at this level and this level of understanding Starks to make that misplay. So he's much better off being defensive and taking the horses, and that he has won the round. He has gained the better position coming into round 3 as long as he just denies Daboarder making any big plays.
So we're waiting on what's happening here because ultimately it looks like the swords did nothing. It looks like he activated swords and chooses to do nothing. This unit Stark Outriders should not be activated.
No, so I believe that he clicked that before while he was moving around and seeing what they might do. But now he's basically just waiting for the Tully Cavaliers to do something. We'll see whether or not Ariakas has what I guess we might call the patience to keep his position, or if he wants to do something else. He can, of course, make a move which would pressure.
Devastating impact.
So it looks like he actually wants to go out there and kill Summer. Because he has that horses, he is automatically in. He automatically gets that 6. He has and automatically killed Summer. I think that this is a very powerful, aggressive move. I like it a lot. He's taken activation advantage now. So as long as he can survive the round, and the question for me is does he move into the backfield of the Outriders, threatening the Outriders and the Tully Cavaliers, or does he try and move back and protect the flank of these Great Axes? But I think because of the fact that Daboarder was a little bit cautious with how far he moved those Tully Cavaliers forward. Tully Cavaliers are still not. Oh, and we see, I believe, in North Remembers come out in response, and that's big, and really will change where we see these Tully Cavaliers go. I expect to see.
It was the Stark Outriders. He just took the activation off.
He did just take the activation off the Stark Outriders, but I don't believe that they were activated.
Unless he forgot that he activated them.
Unless they I'm actually again showing my not knowledge of Starks here. Should he complete the maneuver before Loki picks the target?
North remembers his remove activation.
Yeah,
So
target
technically,
friendly when a unit is
when the unit's
destroyed. So the unit has already been destroyed before the Surge Fourth occurs.
So he has to
We
target
see
first.
him be defensive because we see Ariakas be defensive with these Tully Cavaliers and move back. I like this move because even with the North remembers, the he is currently in control of this game. He has an objective with his commander. We're both scoring 2 VPs a turn. As it stands right now, he has activation advantage and he has a 1 VP advantage.
Yep.
That means all the pressure is on Daboarder to do something about it. He is going to have to do something big on the first activation of the next round. And by being defensive, it makes it much more difficult for Daboarder to do something about that. It looks like he's probably going to use the Outriders into the flank of the Tully Cavaliers. And then the question is, will the other unit of Tully Cavaliers try and come in and finish off Ariakas's Tully Cav? Or will he look to pressure Eddard?
So look, he's going for the charge. It's a six. Wow, that was a sick, interesting bounce. 6. So he's going to be charging, but he's going to be in the front. So
He's in the front, so he doesn't get any of his special Outrider abilities. For me, I would take a punt here that he might have Rob's, I believe, is it called hit and run? I think he might be looking to do some damage, but still retreat from combat.
Yeah.
And that will allow him to then position himself close in a way that he will be able to charge as the first activation of next round again. Yeah, I expect to. Beric says, yeah, I expect to see hit and run. We see Northern Ferocity come down, which is going to give the attack Sundering.
Mm-hmm.
And the defender's also vulnerable. So this swords is looking more and more important all the time. The fact that it was swords and not horses.
Mm-hmm.
But as we saw, Ariakas got a lot of value out of the horses in terms of getting that automatic charge.
So this is unit of Stark Outriders, and we see what? Oh, advanced roller ever. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
7
6,
hits, I think.
7. I think. Yeah.
7 hits, Sundering and vulnerable. That we could be close to a whole rank dead there. A hit and run. Oh, but only 2 fails at the moment. We'll probably see the reroll of the 5. We're unlikely to see them onto their second rank. They do, of course, have the -1 for the corpse pile.
3 more, so it's 5 wounds in total.
Yeah, 5 wounds at the moment. They are kind of in the range of a very aggressive at the start action at the start of next turn. Can definitely wipe them out. If he fails either of these morale checks, either now or the next one, then we're talking pretty much about dead unit. The question is does he have any Eddard cards to kind of protect himself? And we see, I believe, a pass even with the corpse pile. Yep, the 5+ becomes a 6+. And do we see hit and run come out?
We'll see.
If not, then I think he's relying on maybe a Tully Cavalier charge, but they are weakened. So, yeah, we see the scores go to 3-1. And no hit and run comes out. That's interesting because
3-2 because it's double points for Rob.
3-2. Yeah. So the 1 VP, the difference in this game, it looks to me, is cruising towards who destroys units after setting up a 2v2 every turn.
It is interesting to note now, though, with Summer off the table, the activation advantage is in Ariakas' favour with the extra NCU. On-field activations are the same. So whether or not that's going to play into Ariakas' hands now, we'll see as we go into turn 3. Let them do their little bit of admin.
We see Ariakas discard Northern Ferocity. Interesting that that card just had a decent amount of impact for Daboarder there. It would have been a relatively pathetic charge without the vulnerable and sundering, and yet it is a card that Ariakas is happy to throw away, and he's looking for new plays. We're on 3 cards apiece. We don't yet. The question is, will we see Tycho at any point? Does Ariakas think that keeping these Tully Cav up at full health is important enough? And does he think that they're in a position where they might die?
So first move
This
of
is
the game,
very interesting. We see the first move
moving up
be
around
an
over here.
aggressive Sworn Swords. Or, yeah, he has clicked the activation. I wondered if maybe it was an Aya-based movement,
I
but it seems not.
mean, no, it
It
looks
looks
like
like
it's
maybe
activations.
he's actually deciding to
That is,
be
oh, he's tapped
patient.
area. He's tapped area.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
the
Okay.
activations come off. Yeah, so that was an area move on behalf of, and we see Arya in response. So Arya's been
Yeah.
used by both people, and he's going to retreat the berserkers here, I think.
I think, yeah, he's
Ooh,
basically going to shore up that flank again. So he's going to retake the position that the Tully Cavaliers were in, so that I don't know if he's gotten far enough, such that he can deny the cavalry fitting into the flank of the Great Axes possible without seeing a tray. It looks really borderline whether or not there's a 50% position there. I assume that he thinks that he has covered that position because moving them across 6 inches doesn't do a lot, but creating a position where they're not, where their flank is no longer a possible is very important.
yeah. So we see Sansa from Daboarder coming out onto swords as the actual first activation.
Oh, and we see another Northern Ferocity. This is a very dangerous attack. Um, you know, a failed morale check is probably a kill. He doesn't have the charge this time,
Yeah.
but this is in the realms that it could kill the unit, and I think it will draw out a Tycho in response,
Oh, it's not a great
unless
roll.
he does not very well. Oh, wow.
Three hits.
That's
So
unfortunate.
it's unlikely that these Tully Cavaliers will die. You know, we can assume probably 1 or 2 saves here, and yeah, sure he's vulnerable, but you know,
Yeah.
he's going to require a panic fail with big to be
Yeah,
that kill.
it's going to have to be 4 wounds from the panic and 3 wounds from the damage. We
Which it
see the
is.
we see the 3 wounds from the damage without him even having to expend the vulnerable. It is still unlikely but possible for the units to get wiped out. It would be incredibly unfortunate for Ariakas if he did.
But that's a
But we
safe
see a
round.
pass.
Yeah.
We see a pass, but he should be scared right now because they still have the vulnerable on them. And I think that even despite the weakened, a House Tully Cavalier charge to the front will kill them.
Yeah.
I would be considering Tycho healing 5 wounds to the unit.
Yes. I mean,
He could even, I mean, Moneybags is
Moneybags.
a good shout because he will get rid of that vulnerable. The question is does he do both? Both would put him exactly back at full wounds. Of course, he can split them out. He could put 1 wound over onto the Grey Axes if he wanted. But I think the Moneybags is a good response because the vulnerable wasn't used.
I think it's an easy response as well. You can drop
Yeah.
Arya or Sansa on there, and you know it doesn't really matter which one he activates. None of them do it on activation anyway.
Like I say, he is in control of this game right now. He just has to survive the weather. He has to weather the turn where Loki can be aggressive, which is now.
And we see Arya come out to Moneybags, so we're going to see the 3 go straight back on there, and
And
the
all he
vulnerable come
needs to
off.
do is maintain his position, maintain his advantage,
Yeah.
and not allow any units to die easily. His dogs are well protected at the back, and I think that he just has to make sure no big plays come out.
It looks like Daboarder's going to go for Arya. Is this going to be an Arya onto horses just to move those Stark Sworn Swords up even more aggressively? don't necessarily think that's a great idea. No, so he's going for...
He's taking the
Just the
letters, which is just considered a very high value tactic zone. If you're in doubt, I would take letters. If you don't have an obvious play, then letters is normally the best thing you can do. And the question is where will he place the token?
Does
If
he
he
just
wants
put
to
the
be
vulnerable
aggressive,
back onto the Tully Cavaliers?
does he re-vulnerable them? He could.
No, he weakens the Berserkers. Okay, that
Yeah,
makes
I
sense.
was going to say, I expected either weaken on the Great Axes or the Berserkers, or vulnerable on the Tully Cavaliers. I think that... Yeah. Interesting chat about where players think that the tactics board should go here. Well, what's interesting now about the 3 versus 2 NCU matchup is that Ariakas is at no pressure to take any of the tactic zone.
He does
and
activate
he
the
can...
Stormcrow Mercs, though. With Rickon in, he just throws the activation away, knowing he's got
Exactly.
horses.
So
Yeah.
he can take almost dead on board activations, allowing him to use horses and always keep that crowns open as a possible sudden charge replacement. And that's got to play on what Lockie can do or how much he's willing to risk. As long as he has that tactics board 2 spots open, so much can happen that Lockie can't respond to.
I'm struggling to see how Lockie can be aggressive this turn. These Outriders, killing the Tully Cavaliers has got to be one of his more important things. So we see the activation come out again, and we see... Did he just discard Superior Positioning? Oh no, he played Northern Ferocity again. Did he use Sansa to get Northern Ferocity again?
It's possible. I didn't see anything get drawn into hand. When an enemy... Has he discarded Superior Positioning?
He must have just used Sansa to return Northern Ferocity and use it on the attack.
We see 5 hits come out. He has Sundering and Vulnerable. 4 saves.
The reroll coming through.
He is in 5 hits, no matter how many fail. They are not going to destroy this unit. We see the Vulnerable
again.
get played.
Only 1 more.
And it's only 2 wounds.
Still enough.
I think he's still looking to try and set up a position where the Tully Cavaliers can make a charge and destroy Ariakas' Tully Cav on the charge. But that weakened is really hurting him because he has to get them really low down. We see Ariakas pass the morale check. So his problem is if he charges with the Tully Cavaliers and doesn't destroy the unit on the charge, we will see Umber Berserkers either make a charge straight off the bat or be used on horses and then charge, gaining a flank charge onto the Tully Cavaliers. And I feel like that is almost, shall we say, or she wrote.
This is what I did think is possible, is you can obviously horses the Tully Cavaliers here.
Mm-hmm.
And what he's going to do is he's going to retreat.
And it will allow him to move himself to a position where he can't be charged by the Tully Cavaliers anymore, and yet he allows himself a chance to charge into the Outriders later in the round.
Yeah, so he just retreats a little bit and then, says, that's it, I'm done, thanks. So it leaves the Tully Cavaliers as a bait option. They can come in and try and kill.
Yeah. So Van predicted earlier that he would take that horses, but it's important, Van, that actually the activation order really mattered there. He does not want to take it until after the Outriders have activated.
Yeah.
If he takes it before Outriders activate, he will just get charged. So it can't be an instant response. It needs to be waited out, and that's where these dead activations that he took elsewhere on the table became incredibly important. And the fact that he's starting to punish Daboarder for having only 2 NCUs, and this is what I thought was most important. It is a question of whether or not he can force that one less NCU to be an issue, or if he gets destroyed too quickly before his extra NCUs start to play a big role.
So he's going to position himself like that. It doesn't really help the Stark Outriders much, I don't think. It's a slight reposition, but I don't think it's going to be significantly different. It might stop the Tully Cavaliers positioning on the left. We'll see. So they might have to go 50%, 100%. Oops.
So with Daboarder having both of his NCUs down, now he basically has to decide which on-field activations he's going to. Yeah, we see Tycho come down, which I thought was always going to happen to at least get them back up to 2 ranks. I wondered whether or not he would wait longer before seeing if any more damage came out elsewhere, but he's just gone and committed to the entire heal onto the Tully Cavs. And right now, this is a game of, can Daboarder kill any unit? Because the pressure is on him to do so. If he's patient enough, he can wait, but this game is slipping away from him.
I quite like as the activation from Ariakas here. We see Tycho being used at the start of the turn. I don't like him taking crowns yet. We don't know if he's got sudden charge in hand, but obviously it leaves that open. I like him activating Summer. Summer is a dog at the moment who could threaten the Tully Cavaliers a little bit if they could charge in, but realistically is in a position where he doesn't have to worry too much about the support it can provide. Shaggy Dog might become more useful as the turn progresses. But yeah. Okay,
I think that he has the dogs right back behind his infantry.
So Greywind are going now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because that was the retreat there, and now Greywind's activating.
Yeah, we saw the horses. Now we're looking for Daboarder to waste some activations, and then we'll see Ariakas waste some too. We'll see. Although this does not look like a wasted activation anymore, it's a very aggressive march. So I think Lockie has acknowledged that he needs to do something. He needs to make something happen. The question is he opening himself up to a bigger loss because of the fact that the pressure is on him to make a move? But it's important that he has acknowledged that that has happened. The question is, can Shaggy Dog counter? Shaggy Dog could, of course, choose to be the first activation next turn. I would like to see, because of cards like North Remembers, I would like to see Ariakas try to remove a dog as the very first activation of the turn.
Yeah.
Yes. So Van Man is saying that he might have North Remembers, and that's why timing is so important, and the fact that Ariakas says first next round is important.
With the armor save on Greywind, though, I mean, he could. The problem is the Stark Bowman will kill the dog if he comes in right now. But this placement of Shaggy Dog's very conservative.
It is. I mean, don't forget that Shaggy can, of course, automatically charge at 13 inches with a 6 movement. Interestingly enough, the Stark Bowman right now wouldn't actually have line of sight to a flank charge on Greywind.
Yeah, because you could position on the right flank and
yeah. So that Ariakas as the first activation next round, I think, is important. We'll see where the rest of the movement goes. I think at the moment, Lockie basically has to give him too many options at the start of next round. He can't allow him to just take like a free charge into the flank of Greywind and not have a response to it. So he needs to provide multiple choices, and he needs to get his units which are better than Rickon and better than Rickon in Stormcrow Mercenaries, such as Stormcrow, Stark Sworn Swords with Bran and Hodor. He needs to get those matchups happening, because otherwise he's just losing.
I don't see the Shaggy Dog taking on Greywind necessarily playing out very well for Ariakas, actually. He might get the kill with Shaggy, but he is only doing 2 attacks, and he has to hit with both, which he probably will, with the reroll. But then he would also have to fail 2 4+ saves on Greywind, which is unlikely. Yeah,
that's true.
Statistically, he will save 1.
That's without any card play, though. So I am assuming that if he wants to take that move on with Shaggy Dog, then there will be some card play to help push it through. If he wants to do it at the first activation, he won't get any bonuses based on tactics board control. So it would be a risk. Everything would be a risk. You can't be at the start of the activation. You can't be looking to play Devastating Impact for auto wounds. So I think next round, control horses will be very important. It is the key start control. And even though letters has huge value, unless there is something that can't be passed up on the board, which Lockie needs to make there be because he's losing on the tactics board, I would expect to see a horse-based maneuver as the very first thing that gets taken. And Beric, yeah, you're right. The white bases or slightly yellowy bases on the stream is
Daboarder.
Daboarder. The red bases is Ariakas, but Ariakas is the white player on TTS, and Daboarder, aka Starcrow, is the pink player on TTS.
Final activation this round, Van Mon, is going to be Ariakas on red, I believe. He's got 3 on Daboarder, and he's got 1, 2, 3, 4 with Tycho on Ariakas. So it is going to be.
Yeah, he will have the last activation this round and the first activation next.
Yeah.
Because he removed Summer, I believe he might actually even have a 2 activation advantage.
No, just 1, because he had 1 activation less on the board and 1 activation more in the NCU. So
but he removed he removed
by killing Summer,
so
it evened it on the board, giving him 1 extra activation on the NCUs.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Both have 6 on board.
Both have 6 on board, and he has 3 NCUs. But Daboarder went first this round.
That's true. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So
he should have 2 activations after the end of Daboarder's go, and then the first activation next round.
We'll see.
I would expect to see him make some kind of counter move, but it depends on where the Tully Cavaliers go. But I expect to see some kind of counter move with the Umber Berserkers, leading towards them being able to make a powerful move as the first activation of next round, and also the Tully Cavaliers will at some point make a charge, presumably into the Stark Outriders, unless the Tully Cavaliers from the border are aggressive and leave themselves open to something.
So the Great Axe is just rotating there as their activation, doing shuffling,
and
actually moving back.
Basically, he wants to put himself right on the back corner of this corpse pile. He's being as defensive as possible, knowing that him scoring 2 points a turn with that unit is
what's going to win him.
All he needs to apply 100% pressure.
So moving the Great Axes back does kind of like stop the counter charge, which Van Mon was just suggesting in the chat there. It does kind of like say, look, I'm not gonna come out and butcher you if you come forward anymore. I'm gonna sit back.
It is interesting. It is interesting because it also makes them less reactive to what other things might happen. They are now entirely committed to being out the game and difficult to get to, rather than being used at all as a baiting position. And they, in a way, they also offered a counter flank charge into where the Umber Berserkers are. They were both offering flank charges to either of the other one being charged, whereas now the Great Axes are entirely protected, but they can't influence and protect any other unit out there. I think that Daboarder's, to win the game, Daboarder is going to have to apply a lot of pressure and go out there and get these Stormcrow mercenaries. And keeping them alive is the most important thing now. I actually think that we might see an aggressive move coming in from Lockie now. I think we might see. My prediction of what Ariakas may well do is he may well take horses and be defensive with the Stormcrow mercenaries and retreat them as the first activation of next round.
So he's going to declare a charge.
Keeping them alive is the most important part of his game plan from now.
The Tully Cavaliers are declaring a charge against the Berserkers, and he's gonna have devastating impact. Doesn't control horses, so he only gets 2 automatic hits, and he still has to roll for the charge distance. That's a 1. Is that a failed charge? He does get the reroll. 5. Yeah, he's fine.
It was a failed charge at that time, so devastating impact really bringing its value there. He's going to slide across over onto the bog side. That would have been an important position were the Great Axes still aggressively deployed in the corpse pile, but they are very much not in play right now. With both units being weakened, this won't do a huge amount. But the question is can Ariakas be left in a position where his first activation next round is suddenly very dangerous?
Did he forget to roll the extra 3 dice from charging?
I'm unsure.
He only rolled 7 dice. Did we see a card play from... No?
Are you sure it was that not his re-roll from the weekend, possibly?
It might have been. I thought it was the...
If Ariak, I don't see the weekend move, but considering he has 3 6s right now, that seems to be a massive oversight from Ariakas. And
well, also, I mean...
Unless he wants to be on lower ranks to have that extra damage potential from...
He can't die. Yeah. Actually, interestingly, he can't die from the morale check.
Oh, of course. I assume that we may have seen we could have seen Brandon Hodor. Did you say he rolled 7 dice?
Yeah. Do you think he has. He's Hodor. The attack rolls himself as a disorderly and rolls a -2, so he did actually activate that.
Which is interesting that he then didn't use the weaken, despite the fact that he rolled a very good roll. I mean, maybe he wants to be here on 5 wounds, but I don't see necessarily why. When he doesn't have Tycho anymore, he can't bounce back whenever he wants. And, well, to me, I would rather stay high on health and force my opponent
he is going first next turn.
Make tough choices.
He's going first next turn, so he can roll 9 dice now with the Umber Berserkers. Attack, get rid of the weakened, take this hit that's not going to be amazing, but he can do this attack now, and then first thing next turn, take swords and just smash him out.
Yeah, and he does maintain that weakened on the Tully Cavaliers, but interestingly, if you do that and you haven't killed the unit, if he swings now, gets the Tully Cavaliers some damage, swings the swords as the next activation after it, then the natural counter to that is to take the bags, and that will cause the token to be removed anyway.
Yeah.
And so now all you've done is you've lost some wounds on your berserkers that you didn't need to lose. When, I mean, yes, they're more. Yes, they get 1 more attack with less ranks, but you're not onto your last rank, and I don't know. Like, I don't think that leaving them in a position where they could die is worth that slight improvement in your offense. What your value is that it's dangerous for your opponent to try and kill you, but that doesn't mean that you should want to try and die.
Agreed.
I wonder if he forgot, or I wonder if it's an active choice. To use Bran and Hodor, a once per game ability, but not use the weakened seems like such an odd mismatch of what your intentions are.
Maybe he's just worried about the counter hit next turn, I don't know. So we see the Tully Cavaliers finally making their move. They are activating over here.
It looks like, I think, we may see a sudden charge into the flank of the Tully Cav. I don't think that they will make it on their own activation, but I expect them to fly right over close to them. And like I said, we've left that open. That you are playing 2 NCUs means that your opponent can leave that space for the entire round. And a big sudden charge will be a huge play here.
So he goes the maximum 3 inches because of the double hindering terrain, or rough terrain, I should say, from the bog and the quartz pile. So he's looking at that now. 14. We'll call it 14
Yeah.
inches.
He doesn't. You can't be affected by hindering twice, so it's 4 movement.
It's 4 movement, right?
4 movement, and then another 4 brings him to 8, which would then be
Looks like
a.
he's running
We
devastating
see
impact.
you devastating impact, causing him to auto charge. Thanks to that horses. Having the horses in this round was very
Oof.
key, and
This isn't nice. Tully Cavaliers being charged in the flank by Tully Cavaliers.
yep, with 2 automatic wounds,
Yep.
no weakened token. I think that this is leaning towards game over now. Osh, Rickon and Osher. Obviously, these attacks could go wrong, but I expect to see this attack plus a great attack, plus a Umber Berserker's attack, plus swords from the start of the next round. We should be able to finish off Tully Cavaliers. He'd be very unlucky if he didn't. And really, realistically, actually, I think that we're looking at the Berserkers destroying the Tully Cavaliers now, free after this Tully Cavalier charge. Mirror matchups, I keep saying the same unit over and over again, but if
That's
these,
12 hits.
if
12
the
hits.
borders Tully Cavaliers die this round, then Ariakas' Tully Cavaliers will be free to take the first activation and move over and flank the Stark Outriders as well. And I expect to see a really aggressive attack.
Would you even
there.
bother? Was it at the overrun of the Cavaliers? Do you just come over into the bowman and threaten the bowman, and just really just power into the back end of here? It's risky, but okay. So we see 1, 2. What are they saving on 4s? They do have sundering on the charger.
Wow, that is a lot. Oh no, 5
so
because
5s.
sundering and flank, but that's still a very high roll. But there are a lot of 4s. 1, 2, 3,
7
4,
wounds.
5, 6, 7, plus 2 automatics from devastating impact.
9.
Should be 9 wounds.
That puts him on
still,
3 remaining.
Yeah, 3 remaining. Could fail that morale check. It's only the -1. He'd be unfortunate too, but I think that the Umber Berserkers should have enough damage to push it through. The weakened makes it a maybe. They do have their basic sundering though. There we see.
There we go.
They agree on 9 wounds. A morale check is. What do we see in response? We see Direwolf's Fervor.
Direwolf's Fervor, so +1.
And he will get to do the wounds.
So he gets
but
+2
it's
check.
Questionable where if he should ever want to put them onto the Berserkers, as now it is touch and go. It could be masterful play here by Ariakas in that he wanted to be on 1 rank but not be destroyed. I think that the D3 wounds should really be put onto the Tully Cavaliers in this spot because an extra one dice now in this position really can make the difference between whether or not these Tully Cav survive the round.
That's
and whether
past
or not
morale. Past morale.
And whether or not the Tully Cavaliers are free to be incredibly aggressive again next round, or if they're locked into destroying the unit as their first activation, or at least taking swords to destroy the unit.
He did the 1 wound and he put it on the Berserkers.
So only 1 wound. Yeah, I mean they are on just a single rank. That may cost him.
That seems a mistake.
Stark Bowman might be able to get a shot in here, and that would be interesting. There were no other movements to be wasted, so I guess that's not an oversight at all.
No.
Unless, I mean, Tycho onto Crowns could have been taken. The question is whether or not there is still a sudden charge available.
The sudden charge could be horrible here. It could be 10 dice into the Tully Cavaliers, no response. Sudden charge, 10 dice into the Stark Sworn Swords with Bran. One thing we have to remember though is that North Remembers might be the second North Remembers from Daboarder might be in hand. So if this Tully Cavalier unit dies, something else is going to get the free activation.
Yeah, it's always.
That's in range.
Yep. Hey, Porkchop, thank you for talking about the site, and yeah, definitely for me, the most important thing is do get your friends to sign up. Do try and get your whole gaming group involved because that's what matters. And that will just really start to collect more and more information.
What we will say as
We
well, like the rankings at the moment, really, like they don't really mean much, and that sounds like a bad thing. You know, why bother if they don't mean much? But they only mean much when we've got a lot of data to go on. And so at the moment, it doesn't really matter if you record a loss as your first couple of games. Really, I mean, most of my losses were to Carlo to start off with, all recorded, um, because you know one or two or three or four or five losses really in the statistical collection of all the data really doesn't matter, and you can bounce back really easily.
Interestingly, so I've actually built the system a few times over. I think we see the Berserker's attack here, and
Yeah,
he has rolled very badly actually.
6 hits.
Well, I mean, I guess I saw a lot of ones, but yeah, 6 of 10 should really be a bit higher. But yeah, like I was saying, the first every time I've reset the rankings, I have built them a few times, done some testing, built them again. Every time, genuinely, out of just by luck, I have always lost my first few games and been the lowest ranked player in the rankings every single time I've reset them. But the rankings, the way they work is they respond quickly to changes.
So 3 hits
So
in
your
total.
most recent results are always more important than your older results. And if you go down in the rankings to begin with, but you're actually a good player, you shouldn't care about that at all because you will bounce back very quickly as soon as you start winning some results. The
Two
unit is
two
on one
wounds,
wound,
one
which is
save.
unfortunate. I think that weakened is very important. You know, the positioning of it matters a lot there and says a lot about the forethought. But
Rip.
we see the failed panic check.
So
I
that
think
is.
he was unlucky to fail the panic check, but you
He
could
hasn't
consider
failed one
yourself
yet.
slightly lucky to have survived that long.
He hadn't failed a panic check
Yeah,
so far, so statistically it was bound to happen eventually.
yeah, and we had already seen Direwolf's Fervor get played on the last card, which means that obviously he's really committed a lot to keeping this alive. Ariakas has committed quite a lot, and he's going to be defensive.
Ooh.
See, I like this because at the start of next round, Tully Cavaliers are the only unit you need to be aggressive with. And I expect to see them going into the Stark Outriders.
Do you flip these? Yeah. Do you flip these Tully Cavaliers round with the option to use sudden charge Tycho now as like a threat? Just
Well,
flip.
there's no activations left to play from the Borders side because we didn't see a North Remembers come down.
No.
And they're not going to be. They don't get their free maneuver with a sudden charge because it's not their activation. So and of course, there is actually a very strong use of that crowns, which is he makes Rob take an 8+ morale test, odds on to be his. This tactics board control, this activation control means it gets to be the last activation of the round. He drops it. That's 2 VPs. That's huge.
5-2 at the end of round 3. This was meant to be Daboarder's round. This was Daboarder's time to come out and go, look, I'm going to win now.
It actually should be 6-3 because he has destroyed the Tully Cavaliers too. We'll let the players play. We won't tell them. But this game is technically 6-2.
Oh well, looks like they're not
there we
going to be
go.
listening.
We see it. Yeah.
No, they're just
and that was, yeah, like you say, that was supposed to be Daboarder's big round. This is now Ariakas. This is chance to be aggressive, and I expect, like I say, I think that the play from the way he has retreated the Umber Berserkers, his two choices are be super defensive and take the horses and take the Stormcrow mercenaries out of risk range.
Mm-hmm.
Or he can be aggressive with the Tully Cavaliers. He could choose to charge the Sworn Swords with Bran and Hodor to protect the Stormcrow mercenaries, or he can choose to charge the Stark Outriders to try and lock them up. The Stark Outriders will have a difficult time getting anything off Eddard, I would say. Mm-hmm. And it would be a risk to send them in there, but they also are threatening the Cavaliers themselves. If they were to be flanked or rear charged, then that is that's a quick way for him to gain some movement back into here. So this first activation is key. The question is how scared is he right now of losing Rickon? And the fact that he is 4 points ahead, I would like to see him be aggressive into the Outriders and give up that charge into Rickon.
Yeah.
Particularly because I think it's countered by a flank charge by the Berserkers. And that's what we see him do. I like this. I like this continuous aggression on his own activation round. There is possible slight risk here, which is that it may not be a guaranteed charge. We'll see whether or not after his pivot he can make a 6-inch move without touching the
So that's actually a pretty good angle for the charge as well, not the shortest.
Yeah, though it is 7, so it's going to be a 2+.
He can lower
unless
the angle
he might be able to find pivot and bring that in, but that bog is being awkward for him.
Is he going to take?
But it looks like he's going to take a 2+ charge.
He definitely could have made that.
I don't know whether or not he could have made it definitely a 2, but he can definitely get it closer.
I mean, he could have originally just moved directly that way towards the bog, and I think he could have made it automatic anyway. Taken the 2 dice.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
I think he just wants it to be not a disorderly. This is going to be a hurting unit of Outriders, I think.
Outriders need to be the ones A in the flank of your opponent and B being the ones getting charged by heavy cav. They're not going to stand up well to this charge. They'll be saving on 6s. Their morale will be failable. You're going to have to look for a morale fail to get this unit destroyed. But they're going to be pretty neutered. And we're basically saying that the Daboarder is going to have to be very aggressive with his Brandon Hodor infantry unit now and Greywind to do some work for him to ever get back into this game.
Yeah, it's an okay roll. 3 misses on the initial roll there. 2 crits, though, which is pretty useful.
The question is can Ariakas... What can Ariakas do to finish the game this round? He wants it to... He is in a strong position. He is in close to a crushing victory kind of position. So can he end it as soon as possible? That is, can he destroy the Stark Outriders and either Greywind or the Sworn Swords? Basically, can he bait Lockie in and counter hard enough to get the 2 points that he needs?
That is a decent save. I mean, he's saving on 6s.
That is incredible.
He's saving on 6s because of the flank and Sundering.
Oh my, I thought he was on 5s there, actually. I thought at 5s that would have been a single wound. But that's an incredible roll.
So he saves 3, so he takes 7. Which you see is just one rank and 2.
If anybody's watching and think that TTS rolls are an odd thing or something like that, then there are a few things here. One, the players are effectively using the same dice. 2, we have increased the bounciness, so when a dice lands, you'll see that it rolls a lot more and continues to spin. We see a failed panic, but because of his big save, things come and things go down. With a worse save, armor save, then that could have been a destroyed unit, but it would have been unlucky to have had that many bad armors and a bad morale at the same time.
With the 10 hits, it would have actually required that roll. If he got that morale check, it would have required no saves as well, which is statistically unlikely. With 10 dice saves, you should be expecting probably 1 to 2 saves.
Like I said, it was unlikely to kill that unit, but what does the Daboarder do now? If he doesn't take swords or horses and retreat, then chances are he will die and lose that unit. And he needs to protect his VPs everywhere on the board. But if he's protecting this unit over here, he gives up impetus everywhere else. And he is not. And because of the way Ariakas is positioned, because of the way he retreated, like I was saying, Daboarder last round needed to make it such a situation where Ariakas charges somewhere, but he has a good charge elsewhere, but he doesn't have that option. If he charges with the Sworn Swords, he's going to get flank charged by the Umber Berserkers. If he does something with Grey Wind, he's going to get countered by one of the other
Shaggy or
dogs or a
Summer,
unit
yeah.
or anything. All the control is in Ariakas's favor. And to me, this comes down to a 3 versus 2 NCU play. It comes down to the sudden charge,
I think,
not the sudden charge, the devastating impact to kill Summer,
yeah,
and that was a nice aggressive play to take activation advantage. But you have to understand that he was only able to make that play because he has 3 NCUs.
yes.
He's only able to take that horses late into the round at choice, at will, because Lockie doesn't have 3 NCUs. If Lockie had 3 NCUs, he could have pressured the tactics board in a different way.
So this is a very interesting kind of like we talked about this, didn't we? We did a stats release on NCU matchups, and in the 3 versus 2 NCU matchups so far in the tournament, we've seen 60% roughly go to the 3 NCU list and 40% obviously going to the 2 NCU list. Now, a lot of people were saying that obviously this doesn't really tell us much. You can't really tell, the lists matters, all these kinds of things. But I think it does portray a lack of understanding that it does tell us important enough information that, generally speaking, a 3 NCU list will bring enough like versatility on average to be able to outlast a 2 NCU list. Now that, of course, player skill, all of the player lists, everything matters a lot in these scenarios. But ultimately, saying that you're bringing that one extra NCU, generally speaking, unless your list is well crafted, it's going to be better for you.
Yeah. What I think actually is super interesting about those statistics, and something that I hadn't predicted, is people's response was, yes, but you've played Dark Winds, Dark Words, and 3 NCUs dominate Dark Wings, Dark Words. I'll tell you what was very interesting was that the split in Dark Winds, Dark Words was 50-50. It actually showed very little difference in Dark Winds, Dark Words, because I guess of the way that there are so many things you can do on the board, so many actions that you can give up, that it is a much more balanced or variable. We'll say variable, not balanced. We'll say a variable way to play and win the game. We see this sudden charge finally come out, which I assume is from the Tully Cavs into those Outriders who just tried to retreat from them. We see 2 dice because of the bog, but this is going to be game over, I think, for the Stark Outriders here. They've got a vulnerable. They are charging at full ranks with lances, and it's not disordered. So this is probably going to be 6 wounds. So, like I said, Dark Winds, Dark Words, people assumed was where those 3 NCU matchups were winning the most. But actually, in the other game modes, Dark Winds, Dance with Dragons and Clash of Kings, were when the win ratios were closer to 70-30.
3 misses.
For the okay, so it seems that Daboarder is unhappy about the way he rolled and asks him to roll again,
which is fair enough. They were spread everywhere.
I would say that they are different styles of rolling. Ariakas always rolls a single click of R, or sometimes you pulls the dice together and lets them explode outwards. Like I was saying before, we have set the physics of these dice to be a high bounciness, so the dice will always tumble, and you can never predict what a dice roll will be, and it will always turn. See the way those 2 dice on your screen there, they landed, and then they were not the dice roll that they were before. Whereas Daboarder prefers, as I do, that roll where you press R multiple times. You see the dice go clearly significantly up and significantly down. If you don't have a tumble effect on the dice, I think that's very important. Otherwise, the dice will effectively only ever flip one side over without that tumbling. But with
we see the
with the high tumble, you will always get a good roll.
We see the Outriders dead. The Tully Cavaliers just doing a small maneuver back in field. Let's take a second. Let's look at it from Daboarder's perspective. You are 2 activations on field down. You are 1 dog down, you are 1 full infantry unit down. Or
Yeah.
full unit, I should say. So you are equivalently 14 wounds down on your opponent. Now, that's not including the fact that there are, of course, wounds on the board. You're an NCU down. You've got 3 cards in hand. You've got 1 NCU left. What do you do
You have
this
lost the
turn?
game.
What do you do this
Okay.
turn
What do you do this turn?
to
The
try and
question
bring it
is
back?
whether or not you want to risk something to try and possibly give up the 10th VP this round, or if you want to play for a 9-4. Don't forget that, again, it's quite... Okay, what do you do? Now that I think about it, so you have to try and... So because your activation count is down, you cannot do the trick that Ariakas did last turn, and you might want to protect against it yourself, which is take crowns, so that you don't end up having your commander drop the token after he's activated.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, then that will be a late activation by Ariakas again for the better than 50% chance that you force the opponent commander to drop it.
Mm-hmm.
The other choice is you can be super aggressive with the Stark Sworn Swords with Bran and Hodor, but you risk giving up your flank to the Berserkers and giving up the 10th VP this round.
So...
And with that panic now, so that's interesting. Tycho takes the letters. He puts a panic token onto Rob.
Yeah.
And we see, and that 50% is now, almost, off the top of my head, somewhere around 75 to 80% chance likelihood to happen.
Yeah.
And because of his activation flow, he probably should take crowns to protect himself. But that's if the match was close. The problem is that the match isn't close. He's 5 points behind already. So he has to be looking on the board where he can score points, or where he can take units off to generate a bit of momentum instead of just trying to defend the position he's in. He has lost the game because Eddard will reliably be able to take this token every round. Because of activation advantage, even if he forces Eddard to drop it, he will still get to activate afterwards and pick it up.
So you see sudden charge come out for Sandstorm to Crowns. Okay.
So he acknowledges that he has to take crowns to protect his position, and he's going to swap it because he has no use for it himself. He's going to make a play onto the Stormcrow Merc.
It's more than 7, so that's a 3. That's a 3 required.
If he can go in there and be explosive and do a ton of damage, he could get those 2 points and he can make it not a crushing defeat. But he hasn't managed to make the charge. I don't think he will move at all, actually, because I don't think he has the movement to get out the other side of the dog.
Yeah, he would actually just not move at all.
So he should technically just stay still.
Hit undo. Hit undo. Undo is really useful in the game mode.
Yeah, so interestingly, I'm trying to work out whether or not that was even necessarily legal, which is that he has to pivot first, then make the charge. But you see his pivot put him in Greywind, and it is okay to move through a unit, but I don't think he can end the pivot in the unit for that exact reason, which is he failed his charge and had nowhere to go, but now he was in an illegal position. So I think he needed to be in a legal position after his pivot. But that's a bit technical and something that doesn't come up that often, because normally you aren't. I mean, that's the nail in the coffin. That was his big play to try and make it not a crushing defeat.
We saw swords come out with Sansa, and I think he's just saying, yeah, I'm just taking swords. I can't make an attack, so I'm not going to make an attack.
He's just pressuring,
do something.
Pressuring the activation count and seeing what Greywind does. Beric's asking, yeah, so Ariakas is 7-2 up. That's the red trays.
Yeah, red tray, Ariakas.
Yeah.
If I look at it like this.
Red trays is Ariakas. Just slightly confusingly, he is the white TTS player.
In future, when you're on, obviously, that's fine,
When
Beric.
all our many viewers come onto stream.
Well, if you've got any feedback, guys, obviously,
Yeah,
you
of
can find
course.
us on Discord. You can find us on Steam and things like that. Just drop us a message. Any feedback is obviously taken on board, and we'll try and fix things. Working on things like this is absolutely fine in my book. You're never going to get it right first time. And ultimately, even if it was just something like having the names up on stream, which I'm more than happy
Yeah,
to
it
do.
seems Beric has been confused the entire game about who is who because of the fact that Ariakas is white on the board on the TTS board, but he is red on the table, and Daboarder is or Scarecrow is pink on the TTS, but he is playing in white or a pale yellow on the table, which is very confusing. But we didn't have a whole lot of choice over that. They It makes more sense when you see the side of the table that they're playing from, but I was confused at the start. I thought that they had switched sides, and I obviously also made things more confusing by initially stating them the wrong way around.
What will I've got some plans on how I can improve that going forward. Some nifty things, but thanks for the feedback, Derek.
So to me, this is a crushing victory. The question is it a crushing victory this round, or does it go to the next round? It's a question of whether or not the question is, can he kill Greywind? Does he want to go after Greywind? Because that is that VP that he needs to finish the game. Will he go for it? Or will he just accept a 9-4 this round? Rob has the token. If he accepts a 9-4, he leaves the position open for Daboarder to close the gap and make it not a crushing defeat in the following round with some big plays. It will be back to Daboarder playing first. He could be aggressive. The worst thing that could possibly happen is Ariakas tries to be aggressive, tries to get that 10th point, and instead gives up a bad position and starts to give away, say, those Stormcrow mercs with Brannon, with Rick on in. That's a 2-point swing and is the difference between a narrow and a standard, or a standard and a crushing victory. So we may well see him continue to be defensive, because at the current rate, he already has the crushing victory, and he might as well just tell Daboarder, come at me, you do something useful, because I've already won.
Yeah.
So Death says it's crushing victory off a silly missed activation early on.
Yes, when we talked about the Outriders
Stark
being
Outriders
activated or not.
So that was odd. And yeah, I guess we haven't talked about that ever since. That was odd. He clicked it for some reason, and then because he took such a long time to make his decision about what he was going to do, and then he eventually took the tactics board instead, but didn't unclick the unit. Death says it would have been double into a single cab. I don't think so at the time. I don't think that the other. Think that the other Tully Cavaliers would have had the charge into the Tullys without card play.
They couldn't have been. They weren't in range, which is what they were measuring.
Yeah.
But it could have been.
Yeah, it would have changed the game, Death. It is interesting that it would have changed the dynamic of the game. I agree with that. I do think that even despite that, outside of that, and obviously that has a knock-on effect, but I think that Ariakas has outplayed Daboarder in this game. We see him go on for that. He's looking to risk it for that. He's going to try and gain that VP by making a charge here. And yeah, I understand that the Northern members would have gone elsewhere, but I don't think that they would have had as much impact as they could have. Did we see card play? Yeah, we see sudden charge.
Yeah.
I don't see any dice even get rolled. I'm not sure how Greywind actually died, but that will be game at 10-4 because of the extra VP. Unless we see Northern members come down or something like that. Yeah, it is interesting. It would have massively changed the game. I do always say that no matter how good a player you are, that I still believe that 90+% of games are won and lost by mistakes, like literal missed activations, missed orders, missing that you have weakened on somebody and forgetting that it's there when it would have changed the game. Not like you make an active decision and make the wrong choice, where you actively miss that there is a certain token or a certain activation or a certain thing in play. And TTS does have a tendency to increase that because of the way it works, and because you're limited to what you can see. And it is unfortunate that the game that has made this into a crushing defeat. I still think that the game was controlled by Ariakas significantly from the start.
I agree completely.
I guess, are we going to move over and take a chat with them?
I think we are. I'm just... Yeah. Do you want to go over?
They said they don't.
Brilliant.
Pretty well. Been pretty happy. G'day, guys.
You alright, guys?
Hello?
Hey, Carlo. I told you, I think my philosophy on this mission didn't actually play out quite the way I expected it to.
Yeah, tell me. It was a very interesting deployment. You definitely came in with a game plan. It seemed that right from the deployment of the Palisade, you knew what you were trying to achieve. So why don't you tell us what you were looking for?
So normally with this mission, what I figure you try and do is section the board into halves and kill everything in front of your half and hold your corpse pile. And kind of that way you end up with, even with the 12 move for the corpse pile, which can come out to here or here. If you've killed a unit down, say where Shaggy Dog is, with the cav you can push in and control those. And then Ariakas here just decided that he didn't want to play my game and had the healing to prevent me digging him out in the early turns, I guess. Between Tycho and some good placement on the money bags, I wasn't really able to hit the Cavaliers ever quite as hard as I wanted to.
Yep, I think it seemed that you came in with a game plan and that Ariakas adapted to it straight away and basically just decided to play a mirror match into that. And we discussed at the start that basically it was going to be a question of, could you force enough on the board for the fact that Ariakas was going to win on the tactics board with that 3 versus 2? And how do both of you, I guess, Ariakas first, how key do you think it was that it was a 3 versus 2 NCU matchup? And do you think you won it on the tactics board, or do you think that it was won elsewhere?
Tactics board definitely helped, but it's definitely scary being outnumbered on the table, especially with decent units like Outriders and Telecav, etc. Yeah, definitely having that 5th zone is handy. I don't know if it was decisive for most of the game. My opponent did mention he made a. So what do you think was the first
No. We're not. We'll talk about that later. Don't worry about it.
Fair enough.
So I believe you may be mentioning, and the stream do know, and we did gloss over, but slightly acknowledge at the time, there was a missed activation in the first round.
The Outriders.
You accidentally, you took a very long time to make a decision about whether you're going to move the Outriders or play Sansa onto the board, and by the end of it, you played Sansa onto the board and activated the unit at the same time.
And then I think I spent North Remembers on it.
And then you played North Remembers to remove the token from them. And I recognize the names as your Australian supporters from the site. They definitely think that if that activation wasn't missed, then that whole flank would go differently. And it's true, but
you play the game that you play.
Yep, that's unfortunate.
So congratulations, Ariakas. Well done. You're going to have to smash this tournament for me, please.
I'll do my best.
Okay, so kind of like last question, I guess, from me to finish this up. Starks, you're both Stark players, so we'll start with you, Ariakas, first. Go on. What made you pick Starks into the tournament? Is it just because you're a Stark player at heart, or do you think Starks are genuinely the strongest option right now to pick?
I think it's both. I've been playing Starks since Kickstarter, and I've just had tons and tons of experience using them. So I'm the most familiar with this faction, but I also think that they are the strongest faction right now through, as many people know, the combination of multiple activations, quality combat units, arguably the strongest tactics deck. So all these things together just make them very, very tough to overcome.
Yeah. Same for you, Lockie?
Well, I play Starks. I've played them since not quite the Kickstarter, but yeah, been very well competitive with them. And I kind of wanted to come into this putting my best foot forward, so to speak, to show what I can do on the table. So I figured I'd use my Starks over my Free Folk. In terms of power level, I tend to shy away from X Army is more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But with Starks, what I particularly like is their focus on burst damage and speed. So that if you're doing it right, you can pick where on the table you want to apply the overwhelming force and then collapse a section of the table and then swing in and apply the overwhelming force elsewhere. And I like that play style. It's very effective in the game for obvious reasons, but I don't think it's insurmountable. And Ariakas today has obviously shown that, playing defensively into that kind of style can and does work.
Yeah, that's good.
I'll just follow up on that actually, because you kind of made me think. So Ariakas, you're saying that you think that Starks is the most powerful faction, and Lockie, interestingly, is saying you just like a particular aspect of the faction. But interestingly, on that, according to the stats that we've collected, Rob is by far the highest performing Stark commander, and yet Lockie, you pick him twice. And yet Ariakas, you play into Eddard and Howland. So do you believe that actually, with experience, Howland and Eddard are better commanders? Or do you just like your two setup pairing? And do you actually believe that Rob is not as powerful as he looks like he is?
Well, I definitely think that in non-field commander scenarios, I think Howland, the versatility of his cards and NCU are very powerful. So I definitely, Howland should be one of the lists. But between Eddard and Rob, I think it's a matter of style. I think I used Rob in the beginning, of course, when he was, one of the few commanders available. And at the time, there were no Tully Cavaliers. Dark Outriders weren't as powerful. So I didn't find a lot of value out of some of his cards. I didn't find a lot of value out of hit and run, positioning. Today, it's a different game. And with Tully Cavaliers, that hit and run card is so powerful with sudden charge. I think it's a more fluid, aggressive play style. As no one's surprised, Eddard is centered around him. I'm lucky this game that I drew all of his cards towards the second half, because all his cards are actually garbage the way Lockie avoided my commander. In a grindy attrition style game, Eddard's unit can just carve up stuff, which is why I like him. But he was very good to avoid him this round.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And Lockie, are you still happy with your choice to have taken Rob twice to take a double on-field commander, or have in any game modes? Obviously, you picked Rob into this, and it is an on-field commander-based scenario. Have you at any times in the tournament wished that you had Howland as an NCU choice?
I haven't wished in the tournament that I had Howland as well. My philosophy and take on Rob tends to be that if I can wax lyrical a little bit, he's an on-field commander, but I think he's actually one of the best control commanders in the game. And that sounds really weird for a faction that's based on aggression. But what Rob's really doing is generally controlling the engagement on the table. And for all the tactics board's ability to influence the table, it's the table at the end of the day that wins the game. And if you can control where units are on the table and who they're fighting, you generally have a lot of control. And as Ariakas said, it's very fluid, a lot of control over the game state. So in terms of the tournament, I've never felt that I didn't want to run Rob. That being said, we've got a tournament in another TTS tournament after this one for Australia. And this tournament, the NRG one, has inspired me to look at some Howland lists. And I want to play Howland probably into Jack and Hagar, especially with the growth of
Interesting.
Like Mel or Walder. And I think a sort of style of killing NCUs can be quite fun.
Oh wow. Well,
Interesting thoughts on where the meta might go.
Yeah, we'll be following that tournament. Obviously, it is hosted through Song of Ice and Fire Stats, and I'm looking at potentially doing my stats breakdown of it in the same way that I'm doing for this tournament here. So hopefully we'll get win rates and activation counts and all of these things from that as well. But we'll see how that develops as time goes on.
Well, I for one would love to rate them.
Well, it gives me an excuse to make them.
Thanks for your really interesting thoughts there, guys. I think you're both big thinkers about the game, big have great insights into the way it's played, and talking to top players like this is really going to help everybody think differently about how it is. And you're right, I never particularly in the past considered Feast for Crows to be divided into halves in that way. And you might have had yourself quite an easy opponent had you come up against me, Lucky. So I guess I'm lucky that I wasn't embarrassed by you again on stream. But well done to Ariakas.
I wouldn't call our first game an embarrassment, mate.
And unfortunately, I'm going to say Ariakas. I hope that Starks don't win.
I don't blame you.
Get it, mate. Get him.
Win. Maybe the nerfs will be oncoming. Who knows?
Yeah. But it was a great game. Well done, guys.
Yeah. Well played, guys. Best of luck in the next rounds. And I'm sure you'll both go on to do really well. So.
Thanks. Sorry.
Right. So that kind of ends the game there. We've talked to the players. You've got our feedback. I'm going to do a little bit of plugging now. Remember, this tournament is it's a TTS tournament run by NRG, Northern Realms Gaming, of which me and Carlo are both part of. Also, it's run through the Song of Ice and Fire Stats website. So head over to asoiaf-stats.com and you can sign up to the website, see the tournament so far, see all the rounds, who's won what round, all the kind of like games so far played and ones you can expect to come up. We've also got merch, as I was saying earlier. Merch down below, you'll find the links, and you can buy nice t-shirts with, I think, different images on them. I think we've got a crow and a direwolf, because we're all a Stark player inside, right? And also head over to our Facebook groups, so that's Northern Realms Gaming and A Song of Ice and Fire Stats on Facebook, and keep up to date with all the things that we're doing there. In terms of the rest of the tournament, we still got 2 more rounds after this weekend. We're not going to be covering any games, at least we're not planning to cover any games for the rest of the tournament. For this week. We might be covering one tomorrow afternoon, which I believe is Lapan Maniac versus someone. But we're going to see if that's going ahead or not. So aside from that, guys, closing thoughts, Carlo? Any closing thoughts?
A really great game, and I think a masterclass from both players in how Starks can play. I think it's very. I would say that many other lists out there and many other factions out there would have really struggled against these top tier lists, top tier players. But the mirror matchup brought a whole new dynamic. And yeah, it's just unfortunate that there was that small mistake in the second round there with that lost activation, and it did have a big snowball effect. And the game was much closer than the scoreline suggests at the end. But that's what activation advantage matters. And for me, that's where the third NCU comes in. The third NCU pushes what looks like a very close game to be actually a huge margin of victory.
Yeah.
So I think I think it's those almost those small activations, those small plays, like being able to take those crowns and making Rob drop that token. Without that, we'd be talking 10-6. Without the extra lost activation, we could be talking about this being a 1-point game going in either way.
Yeah, definitely. It really just goes to show that making mistakes in general is what's gonna hurt you the most. Okay, so before we go, I'll just do a shout out to various notifications and things. I think Lord Purita followed from a couple of minutes ago, so thanks, Lord Purita. And again, any subscribes from Twitch Prime. Would lovely if they were here, but obviously use them anywhere. They are free if you're an Amazon Prime user. And finally, a big shout out to Open City 3 Sales Gaming. He's going to be streaming the final quarterfinal, if you want to call it that. The final table of the top 4 tables tonight at 8 p.m. GMT +1. That says 8 p.m. UK time. And think that's going to be against it's Frorin versus Larks, I believe, in another Stark Mirror matchup. So if you want more Song of Ice and Fire, you can go over there, check that out. In order to address some of the other questions I've seen in chat, I think we had one there from Silent Honor 95. What other tabletop do we cover? At the moment, with lockdown, we aren't covering any other tabletop stuff, unfortunately. But we do have NRG members who are into Infinity and Guild Ball, and I think once lockdown kind of finishes, Scott and Daryl are going to be teaching, certainly me, Infinity, and maybe Guild Ball as well.
There has at times been Star Wars Legion.
Oh yeah,
and also Warhammer Underworlds have all appeared at times. You know, none of us play only a single game. Everybody knows that once you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. And really, it's if you tell us that you're interested in something, then chances are we play it and we will consider streaming it for you. So if you let us know where your interests lie, then we'll try and get a good stream for you.
All the ones you play in real life. Brilliant, Silent Honor. Well, thanks a lot, guys, for coming down. We really appreciate you coming down and asking the questions and participating. It really does make our lives a little bit easier when there's chat to have and discussions to have. As I said, any feedback, drop me a message, drop us some messages on the Discord channel. You can find us through Song of Ice and Fire, Tabletop Wargamers. Obviously, drop a message through to Northern Realms Gaming here on Twitch. Check out the links posted